Her text came in at 7:12 p.m. The screen lit up like a match in a dark room. I want a divorce. All communication through my lawyer. No hesitation, no explanation. Just that. I typed one word back, understood. Not because I agreed, but because I was finished arguing. The kitchen around me was silent. Half a box of takeout sat on the counter, untouched. It felt like the leftovers of something bigger, our marriage, our plans, all of it. She hadn't even bothered to say it to my face. That told me everything. I reached for my laptop. The numbers on the screen didn't lie. For 2 years I carried most of the weight. Rent, groceries, insurance, her student loans when they stacked up higher than her paychecks. I had paid, covered, filled the gaps. She had lived steady because of me. And now, she wanted everything filtered through a lawyer. Fine. If she wanted distance, I would give her distance that could actually be measured, down to the last cent. Click by click I closed the doors. Credit cards, frozen. Joint account, split, my share locked away. Streaming subscriptions, gone. Even her gym membership flagged for cancellation. I moved like a surgeon, steady hands, no emotion. She had cut the cord with one text. I was just tying off the ends. That night I sat on the couch, phone beside me. I expected her to call. Maybe even show up, banging on the door. Nothing. Only silence. But silence is never empty. It was filling with something else, her pride cracking somewhere across town. I imagined her at the coffee shop, card declined. At the salon, forced to step away from the counter. With every imagined scene I felt the balance shift. By the next day the quiet had weight. My phone stayed still. No texts, no calls. The distance she wanted was becoming real. I let it sit like a test. Then, 48 hours later, the stillness broke. My phone lit up, not with her name but with her lawyer's. Call stacked. Voicemail stacked. Emails marked urgent. Each one louder than the last, though I never pressed play. I leaned back, watching the phone buzz across the table. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one chasing. That was the night I stopped being afraid of losing her. The lawyer's first voicemail was calm. Please return my call at your earliest convenience. By the third one, his voice cracked with impatience. This is a matter that needs urgent attention. I didn't answer. Not out of spite, but because I finally understood what silence could do. 4 months I had filled every gap, explained every delay, soothed every frustration. Now I let the phone ring and echo in the empty room. I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window. Outside, the city moved like nothing had changed. Inside, everything had. When I finally opened one of the emails, it was written in frantic, legal language. My client is unable to maintain her living arrangements. She has been financially cut off. This is highly inappropriate during divorce proceedings. Please respond immediately. I closed the laptop. No reply. That evening I walked to the mailbox downstairs. Among the usual bills and ads was an envelope with her handwriting. For a second my chest tightened. She hadn't written to me in months. I opened it right there, standing in the hallway under flickering lights. Inside was a note, rushed, almost desperate. You can't just shut everything off. You know I don't have backup right now. Please just talk to me. No apology. No acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just a plea for me to resume being the safety net. I folded the note, slid it back into the envelope and left it on the counter. I didn't need words to understand what was happening. She wasn't reaching out for me, she was reaching for the comfort she'd lost. The next morning her lawyer's tone had shifted completely. He sounded less like a man in control, more like someone scrambling. This situation is escalating quickly. Please, Mr. Carter, call me today. Otherwise, we may need to involve the court. Court. That was the threat. But even in the word I heard something else. Fear. They weren't ready for what I'd already prepared. Because here's the truth. The apartment lease, the car loan, even the utilities, every contract was in my name. She had asked for it that way once, saying it was simpler. Back then I thought it was trust. Now I saw it clearly. She had handed me the very leverage she was fighting against. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the buzzing phone. I didn't need to raise my voice or explain myself. The silence was doing the work for me. And for the first time I felt the ground shift completely in my favor. On the third day I finally picked up one of the calls. Not because I owed them anything but because I wanted to hear the scramble with my own ears. Mr. Carter, the lawyer said quickly, as if relieved I hadn't hung up. We need to come to an arrangement. My client cannot be left without access to funds during this process. I let the silence hang before I answered. She wanted everything through her lawyer. So here we are. He hesitated. I could almost hear him choosing his words carefully, rearranging them like fragile glass. Surely you understand she has certain obligations. Rent, transportation, daily expenses. I cut him off. The lease is in my name. The car is in my name. The insurance? My name. She wanted distance. She has it. There was a pause on the other end. I pictured her sitting across from him, watching his expression as he realized how little ground they had. That night, I walked the apartment slowly, room by room. Every piece of furniture, every picture frame, we had chosen them together. But as I stood there, I realized how many receipts were filed under me, how many payments had cleared from my account alone. It wasn't bitterness that filled me. It was clarity. She had built her comfort on the foundation I laid, and the moment she stepped off it, she discovered there was nothing holding her up. The next morning, another envelope slid under my door. This one wasn't handwritten. It was official, papers stamped and signed requesting an emergency hearing. I sat on the edge of the couch, holding the documents in my hands. She was rushing, pushing, trying to claw back what she thought she could claim. And all I could think was, she hadn't even stopped to ask herself how we got here. When we first moved in together, she told me I was too responsible. She laughed at how I always double-checked the rent, how I saved every receipt. Back then she thought it was boring. Now, those same habits were the reason she had nothing left to stand on. I placed the papers on the table, poured myself another glass of water, and turned my phone face down. If they wanted a courtroom, I was ready. Not with anger. Not with revenge. With nothing but the truth already written in black and white. And the truth was heavier than anything they could argue. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and polish, like a place where lives were reshaped quietly. I sat on the wooden bench outside the hearing room, my hands steady, a folder on my lap. Inside were copies of every lease, every bank transfer, every utility bill. Years of proof that I had been the one keeping the roof above us. She arrived 10 minutes late. Designer heels, tailored jacket, clothes I had paid for. She didn't look at me, only brushed past with her lawyer close at her side. But her eyes, even behind the practiced glare, carried something I hadn't seen in a long time: uncertainty. When they called us in, the lawyer spoke first. He painted a picture of a woman left abandoned, unable to cover her essential expenses. His voice was polished, rehearsed. He tried to make me sound cruel, calculating. Then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Carter, do you have anything to present?" I opened the folder and slid the documents forward. Every account she used was funded by me. Every bill, every loan, every subscription, under my name. She wanted distance. I respected that. The judge skimmed the pages, his eyebrows tightening just slightly. Then he asked her lawyer a question that hung heavy in the room. If everything was in his name, what obligation exists for him to maintain services she cannot independently provide? The lawyer stumbled. He muttered about fairness, about lifestyle, about precedent. But none of it landed. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding control. When the session ended, no immediate ruling was given. "We'll review and follow up," the judge said, voice neutral but firm. Walking out, I caught her glance just once. It wasn't anger, it was recognition. She had built her world on ground she never owned. That night, back at the apartment, I sat with the quiet again. The buzzing of calls had stopped. No more voicemails, no new letters. Just silence. I realized then that the silence wasn't empty anymore. It wasn't heavy. It was clean. I didn't need to prove anything to her or to the court. The records spoke for themselves. She had wanted a divorce through a lawyer. She got exactly that. And now she had to live with the wall she built between us. Days passed without a single call. The silence that once felt like waiting now felt like freedom. I woke early, made coffee, and sat by the window without checking my phone. For the first time in months, the morning didn't begin with her demands or expectations. But then the letters started coming. Not from her lawyer this time, from companies, creditors, reminders of accounts that had been tied to me. Subscriptions, loans, even her phone bill. Every notice was a reminder of how much of her life had leaned on mine. I stacked the letters in a neat pile. None of them were mine to answer anymore. By the weekend, word began to spread through friends. A text from an old buddy popped up. "Hey, I saw her the other day. She said you cut her off cold. Is that true?" I didn't reply. People could believe what they wanted. The truth was simple. She had chosen to end things with a message, and I had respected her request completely. One night, I found myself walking past the restaurant we used to go to every Friday. Through the glass, I saw her sitting with friends. She was laughing, but it wasn't the same laugh I remembered. There was a tension under it, like someone trying too hard to prove they were fine. I kept walking. She didn't see me and I didn't need her to. Back at the apartment, I opened the old box where I kept receipts, contracts, and bank slips. I had saved them out of habit, never realizing they would become my shield. Flipping through them, I saw the timeline of our life together. The lease signing, the car payments, the furniture purchases. All my signatures, all my accounts. And with each page I felt lighter. Because I knew what she didn't want to admit, that the life she had enjoyed wasn't built equally. The next hearing date arrived in the mail, stamped official and final. It was clear she was pushing for spousal support, painting herself as the dependent partner. But the evidence said otherwise. I closed the envelope and set it aside. I wasn't afraid of the court, the process, or her story. The truth was already on my side, and the silence between us had already revealed more than any argument could. This wasn't about punishing her anymore. It was about stepping out of the role I'd carried for too long. And for the first time I realized I was already free. The courthouse felt different the second time. Less intimidating, almost predictable. I walked in with my folder tucked under my arm, calm in a way I hadn't been before. She was already seated at the table with her lawyer. Her hair was perfect, her outfit expensive, but her eyes betrayed her. They darted around the room, restless, like she was bracing for something she couldn't stop. Her lawyer began with a polished statement. He spoke about emotional hardship, about how she had been left vulnerable and unsupported. He painted a picture of me as someone cold, unfeeling. When it was my turn, I didn't match his tone. I kept it simple. I slid forward the documents, rent receipts, loan payments, utilities, all under my name. I respected her request, I said. She wanted everything through her lawyer. So I stopped being her provider. Nothing more, nothing less. The judge leaned back, reviewing the stack. Then came the question that cut through the room. Mrs. Carter, can you show us evidence of independent contributions toward these accounts? Her lawyer froze. She looked down, fumbling with a folder that was much thinner than mine. A couple of pay stubs, a few bank slips. That was all. The silence stretched until it felt heavy. Finally, the judge nodded, making notes. We'll deliberate further, but the record shows a clear imbalance. When it ended, she walked past me quickly, avoiding my eyes. For a moment I almost reached out, almost offered a word, a hand, something. But I stopped. She had made her choice the moment she sent that message. Outside the sun was warm, the city loud. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing deeply. For the first time in months, I felt air that wasn't heavy. Later that night, I sat in the apartment and opened my laptop. Not to check emails from her lawyer, but to look at something else entirely. Listings for a new place. A smaller space, one with no trace of our life together. Because I realized the apartment wasn't freedom, it was just another reminder. And freedom, I decided, meant starting fresh. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the quiet fill the room. The storm that had once scared me was over. What remained was steady, calm, and mine alone. A week later, the court's letter arrived. The envelope was thicker this time, the seal sharp. I opened it slowly, scanning each line. The decision was clear. No spousal support. No financial obligations. The evidence had spoken louder than her claims. I set the letter on the table and just stared at it. Not with triumph, not with anger, just with quiet relief. Months of weight lifted in a few sentences. That evening, I walked through the apartment one last time. The couch where we once argued over bills. The kitchen where we laughed over cheap takeout before the silence grew too wide. The bedroom where her side of the closet now stood empty. I gathered what I needed: clothes, a few books, my laptop. Everything else I left behind. The apartment wasn't mine to hold on to. It was just a stage we had outgrown. When I signed the papers to release the lease, the landlord raised an eyebrow. Moving on already? Yeah, I said simply. It's time. I found a smaller place on the edge of town. Nothing flashy, just quiet. A single bedroom, clean walls, sunlight spilling through the blinds in the morning. It felt like breathing new air. Friends reached out when they heard the news. Some wanted the story, the drama. I gave them none. It ended, I said. That's all. But inside, I knew it was more than an ending. It was a shift. I had stepped out of a role I'd played too long. The provider, the safety net, the quiet backbone no one saw until it was gone. A few days later, I saw her by chance. She was at a cafe downtown, arguing softly with the barista over a declined card. For a second, her eyes caught mine through the window. She froze, her mouth parting like she might say something. I just nodded politely and kept walking. No words, no confrontation. I didn't need them anymore. That night, in my new place, I sat on the floor with a simple dinner. The air was still but not heavy. It was different now, peaceful. Because the truth was, I hadn't lost anything. I had simply stopped holding up what was never mine to carry alone. And that realization was worth more than anything she had taken. The final hearing was brief. The judge confirmed what I already knew. No support, no claims, no ties left to bind us. On paper we were untangled. In reality, I had been free the moment I stopped carrying the weight she placed on me. When we left the courtroom, she lingered near the door. Her lawyer spoke quickly, collecting files, but her eyes stayed on me. There was something in them, regret, maybe. Or just the shock of realizing how fast the ground had shifted. She stepped toward me, lips parting like she wanted to speak. But before a word could come out, I turned and walked away. Some conversations don't need to happen. Silence can be louder than any final argument. Outside the air was crisp. People moved past, unaware that a chapter of my life had just closed. I stood on the courthouse steps for a long moment, letting it settle. The world kept moving. And now so would I. That night, I carried the last box into my new apartment. It wasn't much, just essentials, a few photos that still meant something, and the quiet hum of a fridge that wasn't shared. I placed the box down, sat on the floor, and exhaled. The silence here wasn't heavy. It was mine. Over the next weeks, life reshaped itself. I picked up extra hours at work, saved money, built routines that belonged to me alone. No unexpected calls, no drained accounts, no scrambling to cover someone else's promises. Just steady steps forward. Sometimes I'd hear things through friends. That she moved back in with her parents. That she was struggling to keep up appearances. That the lifestyle she flaunted was now a shadow of what it had been. Each story reached me like an echo, but I didn't chase it. I didn't need to. One Saturday morning, while sipping coffee by the window, I realized something simple. She hadn't taken anything from me. Not really. She had only freed me from carrying what was never meant to be mine. I looked around my small apartment, the sunlight spilling across the floor, the smell of fresh coffee, the quiet hum of the city outside. It wasn't wealth, it wasn't luxury. But it was peace. And peace is priceless. Later that week, I closed a new account I'd opened just for myself. No shared cards, no shared names. Everything under my control, everything with my signature alone. It felt like the first page of a new story. As I walked home, the city lights flickering around me, I thought back to that text, the one that started it all. I want a divorce. All communication through my lawyer. She wanted distance. She got it. She wanted silence. She got that too. But what she never expected was that in losing me, she would lose the foundation she had built her comfort on. And what I gained was simple. My freedom, my dignity, my life, restored.